The Victoria Conference Centre needs to uphold the inherent rights of all Canadians to live free from persecution and violence, and reconsider offering space to those who promote hate in any of its forms.
One of their speakers has done many documentaries to debunk residential schools in Kamloops. How disheartening for our elders, for our ancestors who have not made it home.
The third annual pro-freedom conference called Reclaiming Canada is scheduled to take place this weekend in Victoria, BC, so you know what that means. The left is losing it. In particular, LGBTQ plus activists who have decided to combat the conference on censorship and disinformation by spreading disinformation and demanding censorship. Let's talk about it. Andrea Humphrey with Rebel News here, and wait a second. I just had to finish drinking the rest of the liberal tears I've been swimming through after reading and watching statements from sex activists who seem fixated on canceling a conference scheduled to take place at the Victoria Conference Centre this Friday to Saturday, even though it's really not focused on anything to do with their cause. It's called the Reclaiming Canada Conference, and it's hosted by a nonpartisan group called We Unify, which sets out to do just that. Bring people together and discuss ideas on how best to reclaim Canada in matters like freedom, democracy, and this time around, how to overcome censorship and disinformation. But you know the radical left, don't you? Healthy debate or agree to disagree isn't exactly in their DNA, and apparently neither is the truth. So-called inclusive activists have come out ahead of the event to try and have the city of Victoria, which runs the centre, cancel it. And they've used bogus letter and media smear campaigns against the conference's speakers, which includes yours truly, to do so.
Most of them actually got their name in hateful rhetoric. Several of them are extremely transphobic. I know at least one of them had signed an open letter stating that he was with J.K. Rowling on her transphobic views.
Says Victoria's Pride Society's president Ace Mann in a Czech News report entitled, Victoria Pride Society denounces transphobic speakers scheduled at city-owned conference centre. But do you think Czech News reached out to any of the speakers or provided any actual proof in their report to validate Mann's claims of transphobia? No, of course not. That would be journalism. Now, I believe that shot you just heard Mann take was aimed at musician, author, podcaster, and the conference's host, Zuby. Just another example of the oh-so-progressive left trying to put another person of color they can't break back into their place, I guess. Anyone who's watched Zuby's interviews knows that he's not inflammatory. He interviews interesting guests and lets them do most of the talking. But on a personal level, just like many whom are genuinely concerned with the well-being of kids struggling with gender dysphoria and women's rights, he sides with the famous author J.K. Rowling, her belief that kids are too young to choose to be medically sterilized and mutilated, and women deserve our own safe spaces. But Mann continues.
So that's kind of an issue when it comes to our city, because we have 1 in 10 people here in so-called Victoria identify under the rainbow umbrella, and we have the most trans and gender diverse people per capita in this city. The city of Victoria is a huge ally, and at least that's what they're saying, and they usually walk the walk.
Did you catch that? She said so-called Victoria. Her rhetoric is clearly aimed at nudging Victoria into silencing people she doesn't like. You know, to prove they're her allies, or else. But to the credit of what is likely the wokest city and what's considered the wokest country in the world, here was a spokesperson from the city's response to Czech News. The city's actions are subject to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and there is a right to freedom of expression in public places. Any government decision to restrict or limit the opportunity for such expression is subject to compliance with the Charter. Slow clap. So it's settled then, right? Yeah, right. Naturally, the city's just response only triggered victimhood lovers on the left, like those representing a protest group called 1 Million Voices for Inclusion, which purports to rally in support of the 2S LGBT, you know what I mean, community, in opposition to the growing transphobic hate and intolerance, which apparently they like to fabricate from time to time. The group put out an urgent cancel the conference letter campaign to send to the city, which reads, "This event is providing a platform and audience to speakers whose hateful rhetoric promotes transphobia and ultimately puts our safety and human rights at risk." The group then mentions that there's 17 speakers, which, by the way, includes Tamara Leach, Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. Drew, and many more. And then they have the list that they identify as having the most dangerous viewpoints as follows: Lauren Southern, myself, Drea Humphrey with Rebel News, John Carpe, Zuby. Those of you who follow our reports on radical gender ideology and who donate to our Journalist Defense Fund at journalistdefensefund.com to help us hire security to do so can likely agree that it's actually the 1 Million Voice for Inclusion's listing of our names with such falsehoods that is dangerous. But it doesn't stop there. Victoria Buzz, which in my opinion could just buzz off as far as I'm concerned, parroted the radical group's claims again without reaching out to any of the speakers they branded, and added Pastor Artur Pawlowski to the list of dangerous speakers this time. And then 2 members of that group set their eyes on crying hate at the city council meeting that took place last Thursday, starting with Martin Gerard, who, like so many of us, can't even keep up with the ever-growing alphabet community labels.
We of 1 Million Voices for Inclusion demand the City of Victoria reconsider its decision to allow the upcoming We Unify conference at the Victoria Conference Centre. Its speaker lineup is an affront to the LGBTQ plus community. The Victoria Conference Centre needs to uphold the inherent rights of all Canadians to live free from persecution and violence, and reconsider offering space to those who promote hate in any of its forms.
Now, perhaps these activists have called wolf so many times when it comes to transphobia that they decided to bring out the big guns in the form of a woman named Monique May. May proceeds to spread disinformation about my Rebel News exclusive documentary from 2 years ago called Kamloops: The Buried Truth, which, if you haven't seen it yet, exposes the false 215 buried kids unmarked grave claim that the Kamloops band made back in 2021.
One of their speakers has done many documentaries to debunk residential schools in Kamloops. How disheartening for our elders, for our ancestors who have not made it home. This month is not only Pride Month, but it is Indigenous Heritage Month. And the 2 things in common is members of our queer community, our Two-Spirit members, 2S LGBTQIA members, have been walking on these lands for time immemorial, and they have done it peacefully.
Now, I never denied a residential school. I simply disclosed the facts, unlike the Kamloops band, who, contrary to their initial claim, hasn't discovered a single body at the former residential school 3 years, 100 burnt or vandalized churches, and $8 million tax dollars later. But just like Miss May, is quick to cry discrimination when doing so deflects from calls of transparency and truth. Speaking of truth, I reached out to the Sovereign CEO podcaster Carla Treadway, who is also the media coordinator for this conference, to let you know what this conference is actually about.
This is a solutions conference. We have a goal of building bridges and opening up the floor for conversations. And it's been our mission from day one that all open, respectful debate and dialogue is welcome at this table. The reason that we actually have so many problems in Canada is because we're not having these conversations. And whether you're on the left or the right or somewhere lost in the middle, you know that there are some big problems in Canada. And we might disagree about the solutions to them. economy, healthcare, children's mental health. There are so many real issues going on right now. If we can't have conversations, if we can't bridge the left and the right, we're in trouble. So again, We Unify wants to encourage all people to come to the table with their ideas for respectful, open debate.
And that, my friends, I'll bet is why the censorious thugs who enjoy the power they get from faking hate within the Victoria Pride Society and 1 Million Voices for Inclusion are actually trying to cancel this event. Drea Humphrey with Rebel News. If you'd like to help keep myself and other reporters with Rebel News safe from actually hateful and dangerous individuals who seek to silence us from reporting truths for the public, consider chipping in what you can to help cover our many security expenses at journalistdefensefund.com. We appreciate your support.